Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We left off talking about kind of this overall organization of the nervous system and the overall job of the nervous system. And what I want to spend a little bit more time on here is looking at the specifics of or divisions of the peripheral nervous system. So when we talk about the peripheral nervous system, remember we said the key sort of job here was transmission. And transmission, we are talking about here, we have collected sensory data and we're transmitting it to the central nervous system for processing, or the central nervous system has developed a response and the peripheral nervous system is transmitting that out to your effector tissues. So one of the ways that we can divide up the peripheral nervous system is based on what kind of information is traveling. So let's look first at what we can call our sensory information. And this is going to be traveling in the division that's referred to as the afferent division, although sometimes we'll just really strongly pronounce the A and make it sound like afferent, just so that we're going to hear the difference between this word and the next. So afferent or afferent division. And the afferent or afferent division is talking about sensory collection. So here, this is information being collected from the body and then traveling into the central nervous system. So when we talk about sensories being collected here, we can think about like our five, I'm going to call them here primary senses. These are those senses that we learn like in pre-K. So that's like vision and hearing and touch and taste and I can't think of what I'm lacking there, because the reality is that we have way more than these just five senses, right? So we have also pressure and vibration. Our touch can be described as either fine touch or crude touch. We have this ability to detect both like our head in space, so gravity, acceleration, whether we're moving or not. We have this ability to detect how our joints are positioned in space, and that is not including the kind of unconscious sensations like blood pressure and heart rate and respiratory rate and the amount of dissolved carbon dioxide gas or pH of the blood or calcium level of the blood, right? So any kind of little feature that is controlled by the nervous system or the endocrine system has to be detectable. And so that is really the job of the afferent division. Now, when we look at the afferent division, we'll see that we have a special type of neuron, and we'll talk about this again in the future. So we have the dendrite. So let's show, let me make my pen smaller. So let's call this the dendrite here. And let's show it having kind of more extensions kind of loosely here. And then on the other end, we'll see the axon. So the dendrite becomes continuous with the axon, and I'm showing here my synaptic knobs. And then we'll see like sticking off of this, we have the cell body or the soma. And we call this whole shape here unipolar. So the sensory neuron is a unipolar neuron, okay? And we'll talk about that more in the future. If the afferent or afferent division is collecting sensory data, then we're going to have a division that's going to actually control effectors. And we call this division then the efferent or efferent division. And now you can see why we might be kind of on purpose mispronouncing these terms, so you can hear afferent versus efferent. The efferent is always remembering, is also thinking about like exit. And so I always use that as sort of my memory device. And in this case here, the efferent is going to be exiting the central nervous system. So now we're going from the central nervous system out to the body to control those different tissues that the nervous system controls. That's what we mean by effector. So an effector are the tissues that can be controlled by the nervous system. We then can divide the efferent division up based on those different tissues. So we're going to have two divisions here. We're going to have the division called the somatic. And this division here is going to control the skeletal muscle. This is our focus for this particular semester. So soma just means the body. So skeletal muscle is the muscle of the body. And so the somatic division is the division that is controlling skeletal muscle specifically. So we can think about this maybe as sort of our voluntary control, although we'll see that we do have voluntary control over skeletal muscle, but we don't always have to be totally thinking about how we want to move or hold our body. So there is a lot of sort of unconscious control that kicks in. That's the nice thing about our brain. It does really well on autopilot. So then the efferent division, you might want to think about this as the involuntary. And what we really mean by this is unconscious control, meaning you don't think about it, you're not aware of it, and you can't think about it and control it, right? And so we call this division the autonomic. And sometimes I like to think about it as in automatic. That's not the same word, so make sure you're paying attention. Autonomic division. So the autonomic division is the control of all of our involuntary structures. So these are going to include your cardiac muscle, your smooth muscle, your glands, all the glands. So this can be sweat glands, sebaceous glands, like we learned about in chapter 5, integumentary system. But this could also be endocrine glands that we're going to learn more about in the future. Sebaceous gland, salivary glands, that's what I say about. And then I'm going to list here also adipose tissue, which isn't actually listed for us in our textbook, in the OpenStax textbook, but it can be an important effector tissue. This is basically the tissue of your organs. I mean, what I like to think of just as guts, your innards, the stuff inside, right? The stuff inside your torso. And then extending into your appendages, right? Because we have glands and we have blood vessels and so forth. The autonomic division, we divide into basically two divisions. We have what's called the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic. But we also have what's described as the enteric nervous system. Enteric nervous system. Okay, so I'm going to actually stop here and pick back up with this division in the next video. So stay tuned. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.